お帰りなさいませ。
Good evening, Miss Kurumi. Now, would you like the bag or the bucket? Obviously the bucket. Also, I'll go get a mop. We opened this week on Kain taking care of her next patient, who was an injured young athlete, which, yeah, y'all are just a few weeks off if you want to do another episode parallel with Hero Sky for whatever reason. And not too surprisingly, after the last episode, she was stuck with another stubborn patient.
篠崎さん、水無月です。よろしく。
聞こえてるわよ。
I've already had my fill of the whole magical girl thing. I don't need your fishy age regression crap. On that note, during their usual after hours, Nozomi talked about her little experience from the previous episode, and even kind of pointed out the weird fetishiness of a middle-aged woman turning into a middle schooler. Again, I'm kind of indifferent to the whole age thing now, but y'all aren't exactly helping her case. Still, I did like the scene, as we did get to see a little bit of each Cure's natural reaction to the situation, in particular Komachi being comically overly enthusiastic, even though we know she's probably just desperate for story ideas. Anyway, the subject of course then changed back to Kain, along with her co-star of this episode, Kurumi. She was still worried about her patient, who refused to start rehabbing her leg.
1年後目指して頑張りましょう。
1年後とかなの全然大丈夫じゃないって。
Well, at least you could always fall back on being an erotic illustrator for your big brother. Kain did bring up some good and pretty realistic points on why she needed to start moving her leg around, but Shinozaki actually did go into full Arrow manga sensei mode and refused to just get out of bed. The Dr. Cure tried to ask around about what could be wrong with her, and only got answers from a pretty douchey co-worker who immediately had dismissed her stubborn behavior without digging any further into the matter. Gee, I wonder who's going to be the victim of the week. Well, actually, I'm kind of glad we're moving away from the environmentalism stuff and exploring different forms of adult apathy in the show. Though this could also be because, kind of strangely enough, this episode wasn't written by Yoshimi Narita, but rather Deko Akao, a previous secondary writer for this franchise, from Yes to Fresh. I say strangely because it has been allegedly confirmed this is going to be a 12-episode series, and usually for shows that short, they try to keep it to just one writer to at least maintain consistency, like with Akao herself having written all of the episodes of Otona. Though, there's nothing really wrong with this choice, at least for now, just wanted to point it out. Also, am I the only one who really wanted a second season of this show? That OVA clearly hinted at a lot more. Anyway, on her way home, Kain ran into Kurumi, who mostly just wanted a drinking partner for the night. And kind of thankfully, they brought back something else that I did like from the last episode, Kurumi's work frustrations that could only be quelled with copious amounts of booze. I liked it because it did highlight Japan's somewhat archaic hierarchical work culture that does take advantage of the lower tier workers, especially the temp ones like Kurumi. Granted, it was somewhat justified after the fallout of the bubble economy popping that forced many industries to abide by more tight-ass practices. How much the country needs to adjust out of such habits is up for debate, and that would actually be an interesting topic for discussion in Kurumi's eventual solo episode and
it's gone.
Yeah, more on that later. Anyway, as I said, Kurumi got wasted on Big Apple cocktails. Thus, Kain had to be her friend, who had to take her home with her, as she probably would have just puked in the Uber. Also, hi Gia, bit of a pity you were denied a hot drunk chick hug. Then again, I guess the series was still pushing Kain/Milk after all these years. Which, okay, I just want to ask, for those who ship these two, would this count as furry?
Don't ask! For God's sakes, don't ask!
But yeah, she had reverted back to her unchanged fairy form to call back to episode 34 of their original run, when Milk got sick, and ended up sending Kain off to her dream of becoming a doctor. A nice bit that tied the past to the present, and highlighted how much things have changed, yet stayed the same. And yes, obviously these clips didn't match up with the current animation at all, but at least it was better usage of archival footage than other things. The next day, Kain again tried to get close to Shinozaki by sharing her love of her parents' music with her. This ended up leading into a conversation about her being a former student council president in her middle school years, which, yeah, kind of makes you realize that this cast doesn't really talk about their high school years. Like what, y'all think you peaked in middle school just because of the colorful dresses? Anyway, this of course led into some more old clips, which again, good usage, but damn did I forget how off some of their faces were back then. Still, a nice scene where Kain had discovered how to connect with her patients through relatable stories from their past. She had also tried to better understand Shinozaki's frustrations of needing a wheelchair by riding one herself and almost running over someone. Yeah, enjoy that lawsuit later, Doc. Anyway, Shinozaki of course then shared her backstory, and again, it does feel like we're kind of paralleling that Hero Sky episode, with the student being concerned about not fulfilling her sports dreams before she graduated. Not to sound too apathetic, but yeah, this is the kind of tragic athlete story that we've seen a lot, not just in Precure. It's certainly a good conflict for Kain, just nothing too unique. Though speaking of apathy, we finally got those guys who surprisingly no one brought up the fact that they had already fought a villain with the same name. So let's see, we recently did a Silent Hill reference, so why don't we do this?
Little fake.
Also, am I the only one who thought there was something else in Kurumi's thermos here? Anyway, the rest of the episode mostly played out as you'd expect. Kain defended Shinozaki from the shadows, which got her time flower to bloom. Cue the stock animation.
If we ever need to show you becoming my assistant again, we can repeat it and save lots of money.
What was surprising, aside from the doctor who was making more noise than necessary, I mean, you could lay off some of the dramatic battle cries there, Kain, was Kurumi joining the fight without the need of a time flower. I mean, it makes sense as she is a fairy who can alter her human form. Not sure why she needed to turn into a teenage girl, unless that's a requirement of the Blue Rose, though really it's more likely a mandate from Toei, which is an even higher power, that also made it so that she had to put on her school uniform rather than her casual wear. Still with this, I am concerned that we might not get a full Kurumi episode focusing on her workplace troubles, which as I said, might provide some interesting and scathing commentary on Japan's problematic business culture. But then again, this is Toei we're talking about, the company that doesn't mind grinding down their workers to the bone. Anyway, the end of the fight would double the archival stock animation. With that, Shinozaki started to open up more to rehab, and the episode ended with the arrival of these two. And going by the preview, it looks like we're getting my episode next time, which, yeah, so are the Splash Stars also going to age regress? I mean, one, I hope they at least use some proper widescreen transformation footage, maybe from the movies, and two, aren't there only 4 flowers left and now 5 remain Otona cure? Well, just have to worry about that later, because this episode was pretty good. I mean, again, the whole age regression thing is its own can of worms at this point, so we should expect to be stuck in a bit of a pattern. What was a little less engaging for this particular episode was the general plot of Kain supporting a fallen athlete. I'm certainly not saying it was bad, and it worked with Kain's character arc. It was just a bit of a cliched story that I had a hard time getting into. For a series like this, making some callbacks are not only expected, but also kind of required to highlight how far these characters have come. In the case of Kain here, they did do a decent job bringing up her past exploits without being too esoteric, even for those who don't remember or are unfamiliar with the original series. As a result, Kurumi made for a good co-star, being her first quote-unquote patient, with even some clever references through that Big Apple cocktail. Thank you, boozy fruit. And of course, for those who are into this Yuri ship, well, there you go. Now, unfortunately, her other co-star was a little less engaging. Shinozaki was just your typical down-on-their-luck athlete, and maybe it is because we did see another injured athlete story recently, but this is still a bit of a played-out melodrama that is hard to sell nowadays. I am still mostly sold because it was a decent conflict for Kain to overcome, even though it also would have been nice to see some follow-up to that old man from the last episode that also could highlight Japan's issue with their aging population, but otherwise, this was just an okay story and also fight of the week. Yeah, I kind of expected a bit of a downgrade after they blew their budget on Yoshiyama last week. What was more intriguing was the fact that Kurumi doesn't need a time flower to reuse her stock animation, which then does bring up the question of what they're going to do with the remaining 4 flowers, especially now that the Splash Star Cures have entered the chat. Time will tell, but overall, this was a solid episode for Khan, if a little played out in areas. At this point though, I think she really does need some actual booze in her system. Those body aches are gonna kill her in the morning. And as always, thank you for watching, and oh, would you look at what this cheap little green screen effect is doing? Thankfully, we've kind of gotten into the groove of this double weekend review format, which involves a lot of coffee, to say the least. Look forward to the next episode. Until next time though, farewell for now, my friends, and... Uh-oh, that music is starting up.
Little fake.